May I have your attention, please?
Welcome to Real Gaijin, unveiling the real Japan, an American expat's inside look. Now it's time for another story from the Read My Lips series of podcasts. Summarized podcast.
So we are now live, and we have already been joined by a few people. So welcome. I'm Mark Kennedy. I'm the host of the Real Gaijin podcast and Substack. Today we have yet another special guest. I know we always have special guests, but this one in particular is really three people in one, because you're going to hear all about three different full lives lived. This is Charles McJilton. Charles, you want to say briefly hi?
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here this morning.
Oh, great. Wonderful. So Charles is a long-term resident of Japan, and he still has a long runway ahead of him. He's still literally getting started here. But as I mentioned before, he's had basically 3 full lifetimes of experience here. And we're going to try and break up today's discussion about with equal timing for each of those big experiences. For years, he lived with the Missionary of Charity Brothers, which is, if you don't know, Mother Teresa's mail order. He lived in a cardboard box, literally as a homeless person along the banks of the Sumida River. And we're going to hear all about that, supporting that community. Then he moved on to found Japan's first food bank, which is still very successful, called Second Harvest. It's relied upon by lots and lots of people still to this day. Very successful. He went to the Kennedy School at School of Government at Harvard University, and there he has become an expert on frontline negotiating. I know you just graduated, you're still new to this, but still you are an expert in Japan, and now he's applying AI to this. So we're going to hear all about those. Kind of break this discussion into 3. This is a live video, meaning it's ask me anything, ask anything. So please use the chat as we're talking, and we'll do our best to monitor that. Ask anything you want to Charles. Now is the golden opportunity. Plus, one more last housekeeping bit. We will make a recording of this. Give me about 24 hours, and I'll get that out in case you missed it today or your friends want to hear. All right, without further ado, Charles, first of all, where are you from, and how did you get to Japan?
So I have family back in Minnesota. I actually came to Japan by a ship. I was in the US Navy and sailed out of Pearl Harbor in 1984, December 1984, and sailed up Tokyo One to see Mount Fuji clear as day. So that's how I got first. I came back in 91, permanently actually. It turned out to be to do research on a topic unrelated to my life journey afterwards, but that was more related to defense policy. But I came back here as an exchange student and eventually stayed.
Okay, and that was at Sophia University?
Yeah, I was at Sophia University. I came and I, at that time, was contemplating becoming a Catholic priest, and I wrote to the Jesuits who run the school there, and they said, "Well, we have a place that you might want to." I asked, "Is there a place that I could live, a religious community?" And they said, "Well, we have a place." I got here. We have a place, but 2 things you need to know. One, it's in the slums of Tokyo, and you'd be living with brothers from India. And I'm like, slums?
Wow.
Tokyo? Why do you have India people living there? And that's how I got introduced to Mother Teresa's mail order, Missionaries of Charity Brothers, and lived with them for a year in the area of Tokyo called Sanya, which is a congregation of place for day laborers.
So you literally lived in a cardboard box?
I did do that. So I lived in Sanya, that was 91, and wanted to build a self-help center for people. I didn't like the idea of charity, just giving stuff to people, but felt that if you provided people with the tools, they could help themselves if they chose to do so. And also the Sanya was to become a hospice where people came to die, that they could die with some dignity. And so I realized in 96 that I had a lot of head knowledge about why people end up on the streets, the situation, but there's something missing here. And so I made a decision to go live along the Sumida River, which is in the same area, in a cardboard box, for only 3 months. So that was January 97 and ended up staying 15 months. And it radically changed my worldview and deeply informed me in my work that I do since then.
So, okay, this is so far beyond what most visitors and immigrants or residents of Japan from outside Japan experience. I mean, that's quite a decision. Can you just walk through some practical aspects of this? Like, where did you get your box? Where did you find a
Yeah,
place to put it?
right, right. So Sumida River is a border between two different wards here. So it's kind of a no man's land in some sense.
Uh,
Meaning it has overlapping jurisdiction, and that becomes important. Is that we were evicted every month, and so we were evicted on a schedule, and they would come down, put a sheet on your piece of paper on your house with the house number based on how many houses were from one bridge to another bridge, and so they leave. And so, in a very typical Japanese fashion, and this really epitomized Japanese. So one year, July of that year, a typhoon is going to come. As you know, typhoons, you never know when they're going to hit or something. Was going to arrive on the day of the eviction, which happened to be on Friday. So we're like, what to do? I mean, do we break down our house and move it over the wall? Because we have about a 10-meter wall, high wall, 10 meters, that may be a little bit higher. Yeah, we had to move it over, kind of, and so that takes like 3 or 4 hours. So do we do that, or do we hope that they cancel it? So typical Japanese fashion, they came down and on each house they put in a sign in honorific Japanese saying, uh, English would be like, "My humble people that are living along the river, we have decided to cancel the eviction and move it to next Tuesday. Please take care of flooding." Now, gotta keep in mind here, they are in a different part of the city. They're in Shinjuku having a meeting about, hey, when should we not do the eviction? The typhoon's coming. And these are overlapping jurisdictions, right? So they're having this meeting. Somebody says, hey, we should go down there and tell these people that we've done it. They didn't have to do that to us. They did. Friday
true.
comes, comes a little bit of flooding. There's a fireboat in the river. The police come down, say, are you guys okay? You doing okay and stuff? Totally Japanese.
Yeah, I'd say so on a schedule.
Yeah.
So,
So where did I get my cardboard? So I got my cardboard. There's a lot of cardboard laying around. Materials are always laying around in the neighborhood. You could put that together. And so my Japanese senpai, my elder guy, he looked like I called him Yoda because he kind of had that Yoda kind of feel about him and stuff. Kyoto.
okay.
He showed me how to build my house. Uh, and so I'd known him before he went down there. And I remember seeing one of the eviction notices on his house one day. This is before I lived down there, right? And he says, you're going to be evicted. I says, hey, Yoda, do you need help moving your house? He says, no, I'm good. So I come back, I think the next day, and his house is still there. I said, Yoda, did you get evicted? He goes, yeah, I got evicted. I'm like, okay, my Japanese must be really crappy. Until I experienced it, you know? So the first stage is they put the eviction notice on your house, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. Thursday night, early Friday morning, everybody breaks down their house, moves it over this wall. 10 o'clock, it sweeps everything up. Nice pile. 10 o'clock, it's like a circus of these different colored helmet houses, workers coming down there, cleaning everything up. And literally, they pass 10 meters past the stairs, and we walk down and rebuild. I mean, I have pictures of this.
Oh,
And
okay.
so
Well,
rebuilt. And so that's what I did. And so yeah, I was going to be there for 3 months through Easter, but I just realized that I had so much. It was not enough, more to learn and stuff.
mm,
I used to joke with my Japanese friends who knew I was down there. I said, "Oh, come on, if you're homeless for a day, you have 2 days, you'll stay forever." You know.
look what happened.
But here's the interesting thing about this. So I still put on a suit every day and went off to work. My business didn't know where I lived, and at that time we had crappy cell coverage. So sometimes I'd be at a house like this, like try to get cell coverage, talking to who I had to talk to. But no, nobody knew, and so this really reaffirmed that if you don't know, if you think someone's homeless, you treat them differently.
Uh,
Whereas if you don't, you get treated normally.
mm,
Uh, and so it really, what it did is so. it's easy to have a lot of theories about poverty and the situation. But when I discovered, living down there that first night, within arm's reach of people left and right of me who may or may not had enough to eat, and I had
Mm.
my cup noodles in front of me, it becomes a different experience for that. And so it really, like I said, changed my worldview on so many different things. And paradoxically, it made my encounter with the men more authentic because I realized, one, I'm white. I always knew I was white, but meaning that I could exit anytime I wanted to.
So how well, first of all,
Go for it. Go for
what
it.
kind of people are there? I mean, what kind of individuals did you meet there? Why are
So
they
people
there?
down there were 90% former day laborers or even current day laborers. So they were from Sanya area and stuff like that. Men in their 50s. Yoda, I think,
Mm.
was early 70s. So these are people
Mhm.
that could no longer work because they'd reached the age limit where construction sites would hire them. So they,
Okay. And they have simply run out of money, or why did they choose to live there?
well, yeah, I mean, yeah. So yeah, they do because you're not working at a construction site. You're not living at the construction site or have money to stay in a low income rent or place, house like this. But like in the case of Yoda, he was interesting in that he was old enough to qualify for some benefits, but his approach was, look, as long as I can take care of myself, why should I rely on the government? Which is kind of commendable in some ways.
Mhm.
I mean, you
Sure.
could make the argument that living on the streets is not so good for public, it's a public space. I agree with that. But the other side of it goes, well, and the other thing is it does require you to be active down there. The last thing I found, and this is the huge paradox, that there are two types of at that time, not so much now, two types of people who lived on the streets.
Hmm.
Those people like us in the house who lived on the streets were considered to be, yeah, I think homeless is one word, but we had a roof. But we'd given
True.
the
Hmm.
people who roughed it every night on the streets were they felt like, well, I'm just in between jobs. I'll get a job soon.
Hmm.
So within the community, they're like, I'm not really homeless. I'm just hanging out tonight. But it's like, yo, Tanaka-san, you've been out here for like 3 years. I don't know if that's like, and so,
Oh,
so as an outsider, you would think that the people that are on the streets are more kawaii, right?
yeah, yeah.
Well, to build a house, you have the material, you have the space at that time. The only thing that changed it is people's mindset that if I build a house, it means that I've given up and that this is my lot in life. If I'm roughing it every night, then at least I have this self delusion that I'll gonna go off to work someday.
Wow. And what did you do for food, water, bathing?
Yeah, so food, yeah, go to convenience store, get cup noodles, things like this. I think, for a bit malnutrition or something like that because eating crappy food long periods of time. Washing up, there's two options. One was to go to a public restroom, lock the door, hook up the hose to the water, and just use the hose to wash myself down. Very cold in the winter. The second one is
Okay.
water.
Wow.
I had to carry in the water from the park every day, or regularly, and that was about a 10-minute, 15-minute walk to the park and then back. So that I know. Yeah, we had public toilets nearby.
Mm.
So yeah.
Amazing. And then what specifically did you do there? Were you counseling these other
No,
men?
no, I was just as I said. I want to make this self-help center. I have all this information here, but something here was missing. And so I just wanted to be among them to understand them from a different level. I mean, these are
Mm.
people I'd already known, right, since '91. So I came home one night and I see this giant white cross in front of my house. And I'm like, first, as an American, I'm like, was the KKK here? Or what's the deal here? It's, you don't, yeah, I don't know. So I finally found the person who put it there. He says, oh, I thought you're starting a church down here.
Ah,
I'm not
okay.
starting any church down here and stuff. I think the people at first thought it was just I was down there on a lark or something. They knew me,
I
right?
know.
But then when I stayed and kept on staying, um, I think they saw something different. Having said that, I really came to understand the gap between myself and the men.
Mm,
And that was painful in a way, but on the other side of it, I felt a much more authentic interaction with them afterwards. So
mm,
before, right, I am, kind of seen, it's uncomfortable because there are men that are older than me calling me senpai or not sensei. Sensei would be the word, right? Teacher, because they think I'm a missionary or something like this. Uh, but afterwards, really kind of feeling like, no, I understand the gap between us. Because I understand that, my interaction, at least on my side, is much more authentic. And also, I'm not here to help you. That was probably, I think, the radical change that happened to me there is that I no longer define what I do as helping people and that I don't feel responsible for the world's problems, but I could respond. And when that happened, my whole world opened up in a way that I completely unexpected. And I understand that, in the media people go, "Oh, you're a humanitarian, you must help people." And okay, I mean, I appreciate that you say that, but I have a resting asshole face that looks like I'm ready to punch someone half the time. And so I'm not associated, people around me don't, "Oh, that guy is he's gonna help people and stuff." It's not my worldview, but I do know, and this related to the food bank and other work I've done, that if
mm,
I do what I do well, people are helped. I won't deny that part about it, but it's not the framing device that I use for myself or what I wanna do.
mm. Okay. Well, that's quite an experience. And is that just before we move on, is that community still there or have things
So,
changed?
no, that was
Ah,
98. They put up the sky towers, sky tree, so they
oh,
don't want down upon all these blue sheet houses there. Um,
well, where did the people go though?
died.
Ah, okay. So they went on.
Yeah, I
What
mean,
are there shelters though in Tokyo for people that
there
do?
not like you think in the US. They're not those don't exist here. Some did go into low income housing. I think Yoda eventually I did bump into him once after he had left there. I was going through Sanya once and he um did end up in he finally got public assistance and I think got in an apartment. But I would say majority died.
Ooh, oh no.
Well,
And what's
we're talking what, 25 years ago.
mm,
At that time, people are in their 50s. And so, if you're day labor living on the streets, your longevity is not going to, not death due to necessarily violence, but just exposure and poor health, drinking, you know, these kind of things. So,
and
yeah.
did somebody from the local ward office on either ward were they assigned to somebody that was sleeping on the street like that or no?
Did they come down and try to talk to us and say, why are we there?
Well, not just that, but I mean, try to help you.
No, no. Their
Oh,
job is to evict us.
okay.
It's,
Wow.
so it's a little bit more complicated because if you're not registered in that ward, the ward would say you're not our responsibility, which is kind of legitimate. But if you're physically there,
Hmm.
so the war, and so if you don't have an address, so this
Yeah.
thing when I go talk to students, I would say, okay, let's pretend you want to go get a job. Okay, great. Where can I contact you? Well, here's my phone number. Okay, at that time, these guys don't have cell phones, so I can't
Uh,
contact. Where's your address? Well, you live in that part of Tokyo, or you don't have an address. Oh, so I could pass because I had an address I could use. I used a friend's address to get my mail to register. I had a phone, a cell phone at that time, so nobody questioned where I went to, and they shouldn't. I'm a foreigner, right? But it did really, remind me of people I knew who lived down there, who dressed, I won't say nicely, but presentable. Let's just put it that way. Not your typical, oh, I got holes in my pants and I smell bad kind of a thing. And almost everybody, yeah, everybody I knew had a genkon where you took off your shoes before you went inside.
Really?
So, so I mean, we're not savages down there, right?
Uh,
You know,
huh.
at least in my small community, if you stole or made troubles, people would say you got to move on, you got to leave. So, yeah.
Was this Yoda gentleman kind of like the de facto leader of
Oh no, no,
the?
no, 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 no. He was he was a quiet guy from Kyoto, and
Huh.
he and I were one of the few people that made our house strictly out of cardboard. Everybody else used mainly wood and blue sheets. But as an homage to him, I made mine wholly out of cardboard.
So wait a minute. What happens when it rains?
Oh, we had a blue sheet. So one day
Oh, okay.
this is early. He looks at my house and he goes, "I got an idea about your roof." I said, "Okay, but I got to go to work." And this is January, right? I come home like at 8 o'clock at night. I have no roof. I'm like, "What are you doing?" in my head. And so he is re-roofing my whole thing properly.
Oh,
And yeah, and so it made totally sense. Because when we had heavy snow a couple weeks later, my roof stood up to the snow. Whereas mine, it would have been like collapsed in and stuff. But it's just this thing like I have an idea, and it's like, and he's like 70 years old out there.
oh, oh my. Okay. Well, that is quite an experience.
Hmm.
I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't have any similar background at all. Uh, hmm.
We all do our own thing to find our way in the world. That's just
Uh,
one of my. And again, I didn't expect to stay there that long. It's only going to be there for 3 months, but I stayed 15, and
hmm.
certainly glad I did.
All right. Well, tell us how you got from that living situation to establishing Japan's first food bank.
Yeah, so in end of '98, went back. I went off to training for a couple months, came back, and then lived uh, in an area actually right across the street from the Tokyo Detention Center, and became an advocate for detainees. But at the same time, I was still going back to Sanya for weekly, nightly patrols of passing out onigiri and blankets and things like this, and participating in other activities there. And got a call, or word went out that they're going to have a meeting of people that are in the area. And my organization at that time was called Tatiokai. Let's build, like let's build a building together. Let's make this thing together. So I said, well, hey, Charles, why don't you come along? And I became the token Gaijin uh,
Mm.
as a co-representative. And so I was so excited because it's like these are people I've been on demonstrations with. I've done things like the day laborers, and we're going to work together. And it was a nightmare. Uh, it was well, I don't know. A nightmare is the right word. Maybe it's too extreme, but it was like a bad marriage. So for 2 years, you know, uh, I I say endured, but I put up with that. But the summer 2001, that was January 2000. By December 2001, I was meeting with other business people to how can we develop a food bank? Think
Mm.
of this plan. And 6 months later, I formally left that other coalition, if you will, and incorporated the very first food bank, Second Harvest Japan. At that time, I didn't think it was going to go very long. I felt really bad, like a failure that I couldn't work with these people that I had known for, a decade and had really wanted to work together. But yeah, so that was kind of like aspiring to always work with these people and then realizing, yeah, as a gaijin, that ain't going to happen.
Mm. Okay. Huh.
At that time. And I, wasn't this, hey, we're going to start this new thing. It's going to be great. Like, hey, that marriage didn't work out well.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Let's, let's
So
see.
speaking of the food bank, though, now people are generally familiar with food banks here in Japan, but What do you mean this was the first food bank? Where did you get the food? Okay. Who donated the food?
You mean to us at first?
Yeah.
So yeah, the very first as after we incorporated would have been well, let's see, Costco. Ken from
Oh.
Costco. Shout out to Ken. He was not the head of the country at that time, but he said, "Well, I'll give you a shot. Let's see what happens here." And so I
Ah.
to shout out to Ken. He's always been a straight shooter with me. And we picked up from them. Heinz was another one, and then some other small people said, "Hey, I got some stuff here and there," and we just started picking up. We didn't have a warehouse,
Mm.
so, so we had an office. So whatever he picked up that day had to be delivered that day. So at one point in my gang con, I had like stacks high of boxes and stuff. You had to walk in crabwise. And in my kitchen, I think I had over 100 kilos of flour in there or something. I was unmarried at the time, so I could get away with that nonsense and stuff. But it was just that whatever we can pick up, let's pick up and get it out to people and stuff.
Wow.
Um, yeah. So we and
So,
gradually, started that way.
so tell us a little bit more about Second Harvest. So what right now is still an active organization, it sounds like. And
Yeah, so I left in 2023 to go off to the Kennedy School. So I can't tell you anything about what they're up to these days.
well, okay. But during the long period you were associated with it, who does it serve? Where now do they get the food donations? Is it fresh
Yeah.
produce?
So over the years, we developed, four different channels or four different things that we did. The first one was to provide hot meals. So we did that
Ah.
every Saturday up in Wayno Park. So we delivered, well, at the peak, it was about, what, 500 to 600 meals on a Saturday.
Mm.
When I left, I think it was down to 100 to 125, maybe 150. So hot meals, and it was the easiest one for volunteers to get involved with. It was biggest
Mm.
outcome for volunteers. The second one was uh, harvest pantry, or getting food directly out to people,
Mm.
either sending them a box of food or having them come down to our pantry and pick up food. They think of that as more to B2C. Third one was B2B, us sending food out to other organizations,
Oh, okay.
welfare organizations, maybe food banks, um, who are also doing their own programs. The last one was advocacy and development, promoting this idea of creating a food safety net
Mm.
for Japan, that people could have access to food whenever they needed it. So those are the four kind of areas that we were focused on. And of course, if a natural disaster occurred, we'd respond
Mm.
also.
Yeah, that's another wild card here in Japan. What is
Sure.
Mhm. Well, to what extent is there a need here in Japan for food banks?
So that's a really hard question to answer in the sense that it depends on what lens you look at the data. For example, if you look at the data of, according to OECD, Japan's poverty rate is about 15%. But it's a
Mm.
relative poverty rate, okay? But we don't have the associated things that you would have with the high poverty rate of unemployment, homelessness, uh, delinquency, drug abuse, typical things that you would associate with high poverty just don't exist here in Japan. So in what was that, 2012, 2013? I have to get my head around. Anyways, Bloomberg came to us and said, "What keeps you up at night? We want to help."
Mm.
But they were actually, I should say, shout out to them. Before we incorporated, they were the first organization to reach out to us to say, "We want to do something with you."
Oh, terrific.
So anyways, 2013, we've already, been with them for what, 10 years at that time doing stuff. And they said, "What keeps you up at night?" I said, "Let me think about it." And I came back to them, both surprised to them and to me. I said, "Do we have the information about poverty correct?
Mm.
Am I seeing this correctly?" Because I just explained to you, we got a high poverty rate, but not the same social
Mm.
And good on them. They spent about a year doing research, creating models, and said, "Your poverty rate in Japan is around 10 or 11%." I said, and then I said, "Well, let's publish this." They said, "No, let's not." And I
All
said,
right.
you built this beautiful Cadillac, if you will, on analyzing a social issue here, and you're keeping it in the garage. They go, yeah, we don't want to be part of the discussion. And so
Right.
that was really, really super disappointing to me. And I continually would bring it up to the executives from New York when they come visit and say, come on, bring this thing out. And they'd be like, no, no. And
Mm.
because I think oftentimes people will cite high poverty rate at the OECD and say, Japan has all this hidden poverty. And it's like, no, it doesn't. But on the other hand, if you go, where can I go get food assistance today? So this is years ago, when I was there would maybe be 10 or maybe 15 organizations that would infrequently provide food assistance. And I'm talking about, hot meal programs, right? Whereas you look at Hong Kong with a population of 7 million, had over 250.
Oh.
So, that is a big, big, imbalance and stuff. So it's, I would say it this way, there's not a high poverty rate in Japan. And I want to put this out there for anybody who thinks, oh my God, there's all these hidden homeless. That is nonsense. There's not hidden homelessness out there. Yeah, but a net cafe. You can find people to interview on the net cafe, say they're sleeping there and stuff like that, but it is not a pervasive problem. I won't go into reasons why here, but just I want to put that out there. But come back to the, if I need food assistance, where can I go? No, no. There's not that level of a food safety net. And also, we don't have a system here that you would find in the U.S. of food stamps.
Ah. Ah.
So in the U.S., Feeding America will easily say this. Far more food assistance, 10 times more, go through food stamps than the food bank. It's
Ah.
economically beneficial for the economy.
Mm.
So they estimate for every $20 that is in food assistance, 18 of it goes back to the economy.
I see. Okay. But here in Japan, with the high elderly population, are those primarily the people that would be beneficiaries of a food bank?
They should be, but if you look at the media, people want to talk about this idea of child poverty, which I'm going to say
Ah.
something else a bit controversial. Child poverty does not exist. And let me explain
No.
why. Poverty is based on income, how much money you make. And we have programs like welfare assistance, housing, subsidies. That's all to the adults, not to the child.
Mm.
Employment. So when people talk about child poverty, it's like, no, no, no. You should be talking about household poverty. Because then it reframes it correctly that you should be looking at how can you help that household,
Ah. Ah.
right? But we talk about child poverty because it's an emotional trigger. Makes people like, I want to do something. They're so kawaii so. But back to your bigger question, there are far, far, far more elderly living below the poverty line than there are
Mm.
households below the poverty line.
Yeah,
Steadily.
that's right. Yeah.
But you don't hear about that. And for, like I said, a couple reasons, the emotional trigger, but also look at the elderly and you go, yeah, but shouldn't they have planned better? Shouldn't they be living with their family? Whereas you look at the longevity issue,
Mm.
right? Is that a child, what, 18, 20 years, in a household low income, right? Now you can certainly make the argument that it sets them up for, future success or failure. But elderly, they're going to live probably far longer and have greater economic needs through medical care and everything like that in their
Mm.
lifetime. And I've always made the case too. It's fairly perverse if you were born post-war or even pre-war, and you saw the country decimated, you saw the country rebuilt, become a major economy in the world, is successful, and in your twilight years,
Mm.
you're poor.
Mm.
That's got to be a really hard thing to kind of wrap your head around,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
And I'm not saying the government everything's responsible. I'm just framing it from that perspective of someone's life cycle, right?
Mm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, well, I mean, down here, I live in Kyushu, and my wife and I, we grow a lot of vegetables and donate a fair amount to the local food bank. And I did ask, well, who actually gets the food? And almost all of the recipients are elderly people who live
Good,
alone. And,
good, good.
yeah. Okay. And so, before, I mean, conscious of the time here,
Mhm.
we do want to move on to your current endeavors, but this is fascinating. What should people do if they want to donate to Second Harvest or get involved somehow with their time or money?
I mean, just check out your local food bank and see. Ask them what their needs are. Is it food? Is it time? Is it your talent? Is it your treasure? What
Mm,
would make most sense? Working with them. And the second
okay.
thing, I would say do your research.
Yeah.
Meaning, find an organization that matches your values and what you feel is a good contribution. And you think that might be most meaningful to you, right? And
Okay.
you decide that, I guess. I don't know.
Okay. That's good. Good advice. Well, we'll put a link to Second Harvest in the write up from today, and it's also an invitation. All right. Now you have to tell us how you went from that experience to Harvard University in Boston.
Yeah. So in 2021, I was taking the exec ed course through Harvard and came to realization as a founder that I was an impediment to the growth of the organization. And that was a really hard one to realize, the
Mm,
founders. And what was hard about that was to realize how much I loved my organization because this is a once in a lifetime job to do something no one has ever done before in a country that you
mm,
love,
mm,
to give back. This is a real deep Japanese value here of ongaishi, to give back. And I was
mm.
doing it because I've been blessed so many times by this country. But I realized that I needed to leave. And so, there- Peter's telling me I got hang on, let me just plug in before we all of a sudden find
And
ourselves talking to each
and,
other.
go ahead. I'll just remind our listeners here, please, if you have a question, anything is fine. This is Ask Me Anything. Uh, put it in the chat, and we'll try to get to it as soon as possible. And we won't identify your name. You could do this anonymously. Thank you.
So, anyways, I took the course, and then taking the course, stumbled across that they had a 1 year program at Harvard that I could take, and I applied, and much to my chagrin, I got in. Seriously,
Okay.
I remember the day that I got that letter and stuff. I was actually going to a different interview, and I didn't say anything to anybody. I was just beside myself, like, oh my gosh.
Uh-huh.
And so I went off to Harvard, and what an amazing experience. Um, I'm wearing a Harvard shirt right now, but you'll joke that someone, if you'll know someone went to Harvard because they'll tell you within 2 minutes or 30 seconds or something, which is. But my cohorts, 200 and some of them, all people with careers like myself with them, almost to a person, nobody told you what they did before they got there.
Huh.
Only in passing and talking to them, you go, "You did what? I'm sorry, how? What?" And I think there was a sense of my professionalism, humility, and a desire to learn that really, really super surprised me about the people there. The second thing was to look back at my experiences at Second Harvest and disasters and go, "Oh, I could have done that better. Oh, I really screwed the pooch on that one." Or, "Oh, that makes sense why that did not turn out so well." So I remember writing to one of my papers, and I said, I think I can remember the phrase. I said to the teacher when I was turning my paper, I said, "This week has been a humbling experience for me. I felt so much like an amateur, but I learned so much through you and through this, right? And I really appreciate that gift. It was yeah. So I left there, graduated, and as you allude to at the beginning, I'm involved in now, um, using AI for a
Mhm.
variety of different things. So a frontline negotiator, which is my training and what I've done actually, is we talk to people who don't want to talk to us. And within the context of the humanitarian situation, it would be there are people in need, refugees, evacuees, or whatever, and there's armed militia there preventing you to have access to those people. And so you need to negotiate with these people who don't, frankly, want to talk to you. Now, we don't have armed militia in Japan, but we do have bureaucrats and other gatekeepers that play the same role. And so using these AI tools helps to analyze how to better engage with your counterpart there.
So could you give us a specific example of how
Well,
you're doing it?
specific example, I'm glad you asked. I will say this because in 2011, we responded to triple disasters up in Toho. We had a failed negotiation to provide food assistance to 15,000 people in Minamisama, which is located about 20 kilometers from the nuclear facility, right? And I wrote a chapter for a Japanese book about that. I was asked to. So for 12 years, I have this idea that this is the reasons why we failed. Okay. I take that chapter, put it into my custom GPT, and it says, well, actually, the analysis says it's more like this. And I go, oh, yeah. And it didn't say, now clearly, here's a couple of interesting. It didn't say what I did in 2011 was wrong. But as a trained practitioner, I can look at it and go, oh, geez, that's a boneheaded move. And it only used my words to parse out. It did go to my counterpart and say, how was it dealing with Charles? Did he come off like an asshole to you? It didn't do that. And it didn't say anything about my culture or anything like that. And I could clearly look at the analysis and go, oh, yeah, exactly. I can see why. Now, had we had this tool in 2011, would we have been successful? Who knows? But
So what exactly did you do wrong according to
well, there's
ChatGPT?
one more really important thing. So we were there on March trying to negotiate, and we had people coming back days afterwards. March 24th, the mayor of Minamisoma releases a 14-minute and 11-minute long YouTube video with subtitles, basically saying, we're starving to death.
Oh, okay.
Please take responsibility to come here and help us out. We did not see that until 3 weeks later. When someone said, hey, this video, are you doing anything about them? And I'm like, I thought, and I'm like, so a couple things that we did wrong is we focused on two things. One, how many people were in need there, believing that if we can agree that there are 15,000 people in need, you'll say, yes, we need your help. And we also focused on the fact that we're an NPO in Japan and you should work with us. And so within the framework, they call it, I don't want to get too technical for our readers here, but one framework is called an Islands of Agreement, where you take all your information, put in 4 columns. The first 2 columns are your facts that you agree on, you disagree on. Then you have norms you agree on, disagree on. What I was doing with them was focusing on the things we disagreed on, which is a prescription.
Okay.
The interesting thing. That same framework, I looked at why were we so successful with food companies, negotiating with food companies. 2007, we only had 15 companies we signed agreements with. When I left in end of 2022, that was the end of the fiscal year, we had over 2,500 without doing any sales. And each partner had this type of an agreement, an equal agreement. And here's part of the things we did. We never talked about the things we disagreed on with them. Never. We never talked about how much food they're wasting or how great things we did. In fact, when a food company would sit across the table from me, at some point I would say to them, I'm not interested in your food. I'm interested in building a trusting relationship with you, and I'll match you step for step to do that. And I give 2 examples of Nichide Foods, very well known in the industry. It took us 3 weeks because they knew about food banking. They're really willing to come on board with us. Another company, and I won't name the name, either then or now, took us over 10 years. We don't care. So here, the negotiation approach is I'm gonna connect with you, build trust with you on an area that we agree on. not focus on, hey, you're wasting a lot of food, or hey, we're a good NPO, which is typically the approach of
Mhm.
a nonprofit. The last point, that's a very counterintuitive approach to doing that, right?
Yeah.
To go to somebody and say, I don't need your food, right?
Yes.
AI will never tell you to do that. AI
Uh-uh.
is not programmed to give you counterintuitive things. And this is the limitation for it in negotiations. Hmm. So, yeah, I'm sorry. I got blather on. You asked me another question. Sorry.
No, no, that's good. Now, all right, as it relates to disaster relief and specifically 311, at the time I was working and in charge of a American medical device company. We donated all sorts of supplies because there was a real need. But a couple of things that were really challenging were the physical logistics of getting the supplies there. We had to do it ourselves. And some of our salespeople drove the supplies up in the and rented truck, which I just found to be odd. What is Japan doing? I mean, they have all these natural disasters, all these preparedness drills, and yet when something actually happens, it seems like we start over again with all the basics of getting supplies there or helping people.
Yeah, so there's a couple things there. So you point out the technical aspect of like, do we have enough trucks and stuff? And we actually do have enough trucks. So that's not the issue. The issue, to kind of my mind, is first is consensus, and
Mm,
a consensus have everybody given you permission to have that truck. And if you have 10 people talking about the issue and 9 people say yes, that is not consensus, my friend. That is a good
mm,
start.
okay.
People out of 10 agreeing to anything in Japan is never consensus in my book. It's like,
Okay.
you made good progress. Good on you. Look, wait till you get to 10. You'll have consensus. Because it only takes one person to say, yeah, I don't know.
Mm,
Medical devices. So that's the second one is and this is a good virtue in Japan of equality. Every treated fair. Where in disaster it becomes an impediment is that if you can't give everybody
fair.
the same thing, nobody should get anything.
Oh,
Yeah. So, we time and time again, we found that we had to divert 12 40-foot containers to the Philippines of aid because of that issue.
huh. No triage system.
It's different. Again, it's a virtue in peacetime, if you will, non-disaster time to treat everybody equally. But in a disaster where that's not an appropriate response to treat everybody equally or try to get consensus on everything. The second thing is that while Japan does have natural disasters and most places have a 3-day supply of food and water on hand, the local people are not trained in disaster response. And
Mm,
let me give you a scenario. Let's say Tanaka-san, he works in the shiaksho, the city hall, whatever, right? And let's say this person is trained in disaster response. Okay. Okay. And let's say just this person also is well liked by his small division. I mean, people look at him and go, yeah, Tanaka-san's a good person to work with, right? And you have a disaster. So if three of these things happen, he is still going to be rendered ineffective because he's going to have other people outside coming in, managing, putting expectations on him. And because this is a consensus driven country, he is not going to stand out and say, hey, I know a lot. And his people are not going to say, hey, Tanaka-san knows a lot. They're going to say, hey, these other people, the mayor, whatever other people are driving in, asking us what to do, which that person ineffective.
mm. All right.
So
How do you overcome all that?
yeah, so this just makes it, much more complex. And it doesn't mean people are not capable. It just means a lot of the dynamics that we have here in Japan prevent rapid response to crises like this. And that's part of the deal with the Fukushima meltdown
Yeah.
was, hey, is this the prime minister's call to tell them to shut it down? Is it TEPCO's call to shut it down? Is it the
Mm,
prefecture's call to shut it down? Each person was saying, hey, I think it's someone else's call to shut this thing down, which from an outsider view looks like, hey, you guys aren't doing anything.
yeah. That's sort of what it was like for a while. It seemed like that. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, you could see this repeatedly. I mean, if you look at homelessness in the early 90s, it was the same thing.
mm,
You know, the ward says, these aren't our people.
Mm.
So we don't have responsibility to them. The labor people said they're not working, so it's not our responsibility. Health and welfare said, well, they're not our responsibility, they're laborers. So each person said they're not our responsibility in their
Mm.
own. And I don't want
Okay.
to, one of them is bad. I just want to paint each one as saying, we're responsible people who pay taxes in our area. We're not responsible people to show up and live on the streets, right? So within that framework. So what happens is Japan, well, Japan on the one hand is very one nation, if you will. It's also very siloed.
Yeah. The localization. Yeah. I'm with you on that. Say, as it relates to disaster relief, another thing that's always been shocking to me is 10 years after the fact or 5 years after the fact, why are people victims of these disasters still living in temporary housing?
I would only put a guess to this. Is that probably the people that were in charge at one time have been rotated off. Every people get rotated
Mm.
every 1 or 2 years, and
Okay.
so deciding what to do with them, you know, becomes someone else's problem, and then they have to learn about the issues and then start again, dealing with it. So I think that's part of it. I think it's also part of uh, an unwillingness for someone to take responsibility, say, we're going to go this way, we're going to do this. And so you have these long meetings. As I said,
Mm.
you got 9, 10 people there decide what you're going to do with it. And well, we're almost there. We got 9. Well, let's meet again next month and see if we can get that 10th person. And you get that 10th person and you find that number 2 said, well, I've been thinking, I read something. I'm going to change my mind on this. And you're back at square one,
I don't know.
right? And I think this is sometimes the uh, perfection over progress
Mm.
challenge that we face here is that people, and not a comfort of saying a failure.
Ah,
And I think
okay.
that's
Yeah.
why I was successful with Second Harvest was that I was wholly capable of failure. And I'm sure often my staff were looking at me like, when is he going to set himself on fire and implode? You know, um, I mean, I don't feel good when I fail, but I don't use it as a metric for who I'm as a person, if you will,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
I think Japanese really feel like, oh, I failed, I failed, I failed. It's like, yeah, great. What did we learn?
Mm.
When I left Second Harvest, we had worked a year on a program to open up the first unmanned supermarket in a food desert in Okinawa. And what was going to make it unique about it was that it would serve both people who could pay full price,
Mm.
who could pay semi price, or people who need it for free. Okay.
Mm.
And we had localized this from Sweden.
Huh.
When I left, I told the board, hey, there's a 90% chance that this will fail within 6 months, which is common in new ventures, right? The new CEO came and killed it within 2 weeks. Said, we're not doing it.
Oh.
And, you know, and without, anyways, long story killed it. But my reflection on it is like, you killed the opportunity to learn something.
Mm.
Had it you failed as I predicted you probably would have, you would have had that at least that experience to pass on to somebody else to say, here you can stand on my shoulders to do what I couldn't do. Right. And I think the Japanese sometimes don't see it from that perspective rather than I feel a deep responsibility to the group that I failed the group rather than, hey, you carried the ball pretty damn far.
Yeah.
And I know we didn't get to the goal line, but let's look at what you learned. And maybe we can regroup and do something again or do something different. So, like in my case, I never made that self help center after I left living on the streets because I realized I'm not the guy to do it.
Mm.
But what I learned along the river, informed me and I hopefully made a good, organization afterwards. Or at least a unique one, I think.
Wow. Think you were successful. And so tell us more about what you're doing now as a frontline negotiator.
Yeah, so we work on issues of, complex issues and using AI, both educating people how to use these tools and running simulations, and then also looking for opportunities to actually use them in the real world. This is
Okay.
cutting edge of developing these tools. And so um, we're at the stage right now. I have a joint research project with the Japan Red Cross and
Hmm.
also part of the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative to look at AI. And one of the components is in this frontline negotiations. And so I would say primarily right now, I mean, I use it personally for my own complex problems or issues I'm dealing with and just some unexpected benefits. And one of the biggest one is not just the clarity of the issues, but that emotional release that I
Mm.
from using it. I didn't expect that. Meaning I had an issue with the person. I got clarity about the issue, but then when I had to engage them again, all that emotional negativity that's there
Mm.
sometimes is
Mm.
gone.
That's true. It can be impartial. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so that part was completely surprising. And so it's called cognitive offloading. And so I am, in the initial stage doing some research testing on that. Is it just, you know, to me, is it particular to me, or do other people experience this? But as a frontline negotiator, you're always negotiating two ways. One with you and your counterpart who doesn't like you, doesn't want to talk to you, doesn't want to have a
Uh,
relationship with you, but also you're working in a team,
mm.
or at least with yourself. And that's a different type of negotiation that goes on. And so to be able to manage both of those using the tools have been extremely helpful for me. Mm.
So, and the Japanese Red Cross is primarily operating outside of Japan with these
So they
tools?
have two divisions, one that's domestic, one that's international.
Mhm.
The gentleman I'm working with, he is in the innovation department. And so we're looking at how can we use AI for doing that first 48-hour assessment? How can we use it
Mm.
for supply chain management? And then lastly, frontline negotiations. How can we use it to negotiate access with the different stakeholders? And, in Japan case, it'd be bureaucrats, local officials,
Mm.
other
So on a domestic level. Yeah.
gatekeepers. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. Very good. Well, let's check and see if we got any questions. It's hard to keep up here while we're doing everything on the phone, but I don't see any. Although we'll see. We have a number of people registered, so please feel free to ask anything you want of our guest, Charles. Very good. And so, what are your plans for the future?
Well, my plans were for the future before this administration was to pivot outside of
Ah.
the humanitarian world.
Mm.
So now that that is dissolved or gone, chaotic, right now I'm focused on doing that research. I got a research paper on AI and disaster relief. Also finishing up a paper on Kodomo Shokudo, children's cafes, or looking at that from a different perspective. And offering my service as a negotiator, either to
Mm.
negotiate on behalf of other people or to provide them with feedback or the tools that we're using. So the tools, we want to put the tools out to everybody.
Mm.
So I can either show someone within 20 minutes how to make their own custom GPT to make these tools, or provide the secret sauce to use these tools.
Good. And say about USAID.
Mm.
All right, I'm curious since you know a lot more about this than I do, and you were trying to be involved with them. So, what are the organizations that have taken up the slack, if any, in the meantime?
I've heard just the opposite, that well, there's no organization that can replace USAID in terms of funding or personnel, right?
Mm.
And so many have cut back or even, you know, uh, just have disbanded because of the
Oh,
lack of. You hear of 500 tons of food being burned up in the Middle East, U.S. money, paid money, because USAID, the current administration, doesn't want to release it. Contraceptives being held in Africa and not being distributed. So those are heartbreaking ones.
yeah.
That aid is already there, paid for. All you have to do
Mm.
is say, use it, and that's not being done. So I've not heard of any organizations that are saying we're going to take up the lead and stuff like this. I've heard a lot, that are trying to figure out how to pivot and try to remain stable, through it. But what people need to understand is that even if a new administration comes in, new Congress comes in and allocates money, it's not going to replace the lost trust or talent
Mm.
that's left.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so money's not going to fix this. And so
Mm.
what's lost is the multiplier effect of peace and goodwill that has gone out through the door. So
Mm. Not good. Oh, wow.
it's a challenging time. I would have to say that. Very, very, very depressing in that sense.
All right. Well, we can't leave this conversation on that note. We need something to look forward to here. So, within Japan, though, do you foresee more of a need for your services? And if so, how might that expand?
Yeah, so I think there is definitely a need to relook at disaster assistance, and so
Mm.
develop AI tools because currently right now there is no 48-hour initial rapid assessment. No organization does that. In fact, my organization, Second Harvest, took them 6 days to respond to the Notohan earthquake. So that was really depressing to hear that it took them
Mm.
that long to do anything. Um,
Mm.
so anyways, did that first 48 hours using AI to help that out there, the situation. The second one is, again, getting the right aid to the right people at the right time, and to help people understand it. Just people need to understand that wrong aid at the wrong time is not helpful to anybody.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
saying let's donate food, it really clogs up the supply chain. It's not helpful. And the last one, is getting people to think about, well, yes, the government said no, or they said no. That's a good starting point to have a conversation. Or it is, or maybe rethinking about it, like we did with the food companies, of like build trust first. Start with
Mm.
small trust building things. Approach it differently instead of asking for permission. Developing a relationship.
Mm.
Finding out what their concerns are. Focusing on that. As a way to engage with the people. I'm embarrassed when I think about the number of things that I did wrong in 2011 that I didn't do those things. Um, you know, Looking back, but looking forward, yeah. And I think all of three of these things, AI is not a panacea, right? It's not a magic bullet, but it certainly can be a multiplier for resource-strapped organizations and people who are thinking about doing differently. And the last thing I would encourage people is to explore using AI so that you understand what it can't do. You understand
Yeah.
what its
Mm.
limitations are. And you understand that you, in developing authentic interaction with other people, will be far more effective than what AI makes an email or this. But what AI can maybe reveal is your own biases about an issue
Yeah. Ooh.
or compile a vast things. And what AI can do right now that I think our readers might really be interested in is I can take a Japanese document from the government in Japanese. Now I read Japanese, so I can look at what it says, and I can upload it and interact with that in English.
Yeah.
That is revolutionary. That is a
That's true.
breakthrough, right? To imagine you can ask it questions in English and it's going to give you information out, right?
Yeah.
So I think we're at the beginning, but as I said, my wife says, weren't you going to say it 2 years ago, AI is going to kill us and we're all going to die? Now you're a big proponent. I'm like, the more I use it, the more I see where I want my voice, not AI's voice. And I see where AI is helpful in some of the
Mm.
things I do. So, this is why I encourage people to explore because AI is coming.
Oh, yeah. Already.
Yeah, it's already here. So, that'd be my thing. So on a upbeat note, I think it's people like you and I, um, when I was at the food bank, I often said Japan is my country. As long as I'm here, this is my country. And so now when I talk about or tell people, I use the word we. and I,
Mm. Mm.
because this is my country. I've lived here over half my life. Now, I know that sounds jarring to Japanese, and I could appreciate why that might be, but I think as we continue to take ownership of where we live and reframe it that way and just goes, oh, tamatama, I just have a passport that's an American, not Japanese, but I have paid my rent here, so to speak.
I'd say so, except while you were living on the river.
Yeah, yeah, Japanese living on the,
Kidding you.
so it gives me a different perspective. I'm not a passive existence here, but I'm an active
I'm
member
kidding you.
of it. And it also means that I need to accommodate myself to how things are done in Japan, but also means that I don't have to apologize for some of the things that I do, right?
Hmm.
You know, and
I'd
so,
say so.
so I think on an upbeat note, I would hope to see more foreigners have that perspective that you can vote every day through your actions, and your actions
Mm.
want to see the country to be better. And that's how I saw my work at the food bank, and now I see my work, continuing on, just because it's given me so much that I want to, return the favor. So
Terrific. Well, that's a perfect way to end the conversation.
good.
Charles, thank you so much. And
Oh,
for our
but
viewers, thank you for your patience. And I will follow up with a little write up. But we wish you the best
all
of
right.
luck for the future. You've already had 3 lifetimes, a fourth is underway right now. So, more good things to come.
All right. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks for watching and or listening to another story from the Read My Lips series of podcasts on Real Gaijin. Tell us what you think and be sure to tune in again next time.